Hello and welcome to Soul's Compass Healing. My name is Brianne Lazinski, and I am exceptionally excited to speak with you under this Taurus full moon about what we have coming up this month and months. So I am late on this report because a week ago, Mama Earth brought me down and I had a concussion. I am having a window of opportunity right now where I can hopefully make some sense of some things for you all. And so instead of focusing super detailed on this full moon that I'm filming this under, I'm going to be speaking to what we are going to be leaning into from now until spring, Northern Hemisphere. It's a good time to do a little bit of this because wow, we can be drowning otherwise, right? There is a lot of intensity going on. A lot that is completely out of our control. And I want to speak to what we can do, particularly in situations like this, because what human nature is we will go through these cycles, and I always say this, so bear with me. I was just going to repeat the broken record for a minute, but we go through these cycles, right, of repetitious experiences over and over again. And right now we are under the influence of a south nodal Virgo solar eclipse. And so with this regression into the past that we are experiencing, all of this stuff that we don't even know where the bottom of it is, like where do these tendrils actually end? This story could reel on and on and on down into these depths that are so deeply in our unconscious. And when that occurs, it's sometimes scary because we can feel like our nervous system gets hijacked. It's like, oh, here I was thinking that I could, move forward with this, that, or the other thing, and then boom, something happens that pulls us into the past, into a memory that we may know consciously or not. And that is where we're finding ourselves, and the nervous system is going to respond to that. First and foremostly, yeah. And it's in our nature to be like that. So there's nothing wrong with it. But what I want to offer here is the fact that when our nervous system goes through this and it gets compounded and it gets compounded, compiled, situation, circumstance, piling up upon one another, without, especially, and this is really what I want to hone in on under this Taurus full moon, is that when this is happening without the necessary resources that we need in order to process it, it gets very overwhelming. And what is overwhelm? Overwhelm is trauma. This is how trauma repeats. And when we are finding ourselves in this moment in time where there is so many dwindling resources, those who have been oppressed in our recent history, I'm just talking about recent history here, but this is going back like thousands of years, what we're dealing with here. Those who have been most oppressed have been feeling it. How? How do people feel when they're oppressed? What circumstances in their life get changed when they're oppressed? Well, of course, there's many answers to that question, but ultimately, resources get taken away, needs go unmet, and that is when the learned helplessness settles in. So here's the analogy. If there is a person having one foot on the accelerator and one foot on the brakes simultaneously, that's where most of our nervous systems are right now. And it is that way because life is demanding so much of us, and we oftentimes don't, it's like if you've ever been in the surf, you know that when the waves come and you get sucked down, you have to surrender to just letting that wave complete until you get shot back up, right? Hopefully, you get a chance to gasp for a breath or two of air before another wave comes and takes you down. But that isn't always the case, And sometimes we get held down longer than what we held our breath for. And so this is when, again, it comes down to this lack of resources, right? This lack of, having the resource such as time to be able to process what's going on, to be able to process the past that's coming up that is demanding our attention to be processed, right? And we can, this is a time, I'm not saying that we can't move forward, but like we pretty much can only move forward through seriously addressing the past right now. And this is from now until spring 2026. And so, anyways, getting back to this analogy, one foot on the accelerator, one foot on the brakes is like we are, having more demands. Our money is worth less. The list goes on, right? So it's like, well, I've got to work more. I've got to produce more. I've got to, the hustle, the grind is real and becoming realer for a wider population of people than what it was even just 5 years ago. And at the same time, our body is saying, whoa, slow down. I can't, this is not sustainable, right? And so our body basically shuts down and we go into this functional freeze where we are going through the rhythms of life, the motions of life, and things can kind of start to feel really dull and really, mundane. And again, it comes down to that learned helplessness is what I want to address. Because learned helplessness is when our nervous system is in this state and it registers or it clocks, oh, I don't have any power to make any change right here, right now, in my situation, for the future even. And when that settles in as like a core orientation, belief, embedded in the psyche and in the nervous system for entire populations of people, we're in deep shit. Because we do have power. We do have power. And if you want to know the difference between being able to observe a person who um, a person who is not in their power versus a person who is in their power. And I'm using, a polarity here to demonstrate a comparative contrast. But if you want to observe that, observe whether that person needs to power grab. So take power from somebody else, putting themselves in a position of superiority, putting the other person in a position of inferiority so that they have power over somebody. That's the intention behind a power grab. Of course, every situation is unique. There's ulterior motivations for why anybody would want to do that to anybody else, right? But somebody who is actually standing in their power doesn't need to do that. That's the difference. There's no need to put anybody else on a pedestal or put anybody else lower than oneself when we are embodying our power. And I really am speaking to Pluto's grand entrance over the past roughly year into Aquarius, ruled by Uranus, who is, I think it's tomorrow, November 7th, going to be going retrograde into the sign of Taurus for the last time in our lifetime. So Uranus has been in Taurus since 2018. And Uranus will enter Gemini for the last time in our lifetimes. This ingress will be happening April 24th or 25th of next year. And Uranus is going to be stationing direct at the beginning of February at 27 degrees Taurus. So, yeah. Sorry, I'm just laughing because, yeah, my moon is at 26 degrees Taurus, so it ain't over yet. But, all right. Where was I? Right. So, we're talking about cusps here. And I'm talking about cusps here. I'm talking about from the Capricorn into Aquarius cusp, and I also want to be talking about from the Taurus into Gemini cusp. What is that about? Well, it's about the realization, and this is of course underneath everything else that we have going on, which I'm going to speak to, Saturn and Neptune retrograde in the last degrees of Pisces for the last time in our lifetimes and for the last time in thousands of years. Have they been together like this? The realization of unsustainable societal structures and any structures, unsustainable structures within our own consciousness, our own psyche, our own spirituality, our own emotional body. Everything has a structure, right? This is how this stands up, because it has a structure. It's inherent in nature. It's everywhere you look. So, this, again, what we're seeing is this attempt to concentrate power into these little pockets where class divides are being created, where there is resources being taken away from vast populations of people and hoarded for a few, right? And so, the realization is that we feel the need to secure ourselves right now. We feel the need to hunker down, right? Financially, with our home, our sense of peace, our ability to grow our own food, our ability to sustain ourselves. This is very real right now. And it's easier said than done. Okay. I can take my shades off now. It was just so bright before. It's easier said than done with the chaos that's going on and everything that's, changing every 2 seconds, right? So what I want to remind us of is that when we are having this period where we get a trigger and it unconsciously or consciously triggers this, old wound, crisis, memory, however it manifests for you, trauma, that's pointing to that, right? That there's some sort of loose ends to be dealt with. And it's also pointing to something else. And that is the part of you on the inside that is that Taurus side of you. We all have a Taurus side. We all have an inner Taurus side that we can draw upon to source ourselves, to resource ourselves with this internal security. Because, yes, trauma changes us, right? I mean, this whole thing around, the last however many 7 years of Uranus in Taurus, we've gotten a very good taste of how when trauma happens, it does change us to a point, and also there is this part of us that goes on despite it, right? And this is the part that we really need to anchor into. This is the part of us that is gold. And with today's full moon in Taurus, featuring Mars just entering into Sagittarius, yay, opposing Uranus, we can really be, the positive side of that would be, yes, that we are finding the gold of who we are and who we are becoming in this process of these repetitious patterns that reopen the wounds, that make us remember. Because every time we go through it, it's choice time. It's choice time. And it's also something to be said around uplifting one another, because this boat of oppressed peoples in the world is getting packed full, it's like standing room only. So there's gonna be, without a doubt, opportunities where we can look to our neighbor and offer support, because yeah, it's it's a growing commonality between us. And that's the most beautiful thing about humanity to me. Well, one of them is we're common. We got a lot in common. We've got a lot of differences, right? Everybody is as unique as their birth chart, right? And we need to honor that too. But the commonalities are becoming increasingly apparent as the resources dwindle and we find ourselves in more and more similar boats of being oppressed. And so I want to bring in now, weaving in Jupiter in the sign of Cancer is actually also going to be turning retrograde on November 11th, trining Neptune and Saturn, who are retrograde in the final degrees of Pisces. And this is very interesting because of the nature of what Saturn and Neptune are up to, which I've been speaking to all year. So you can watch pretty much any one of my videos and get a dose of that. But right now with Jupiter sitting where he is in the sign of Cancer, he's been stationed on the north node of Pluto, Saturn, and Jupiter itself, the planetary nodes. And so this is really, really long-term stuff that the Earth School is teaching us right now. Teaching humanity right now. It's like the teacher of life is saying we can change our culture by slowing down enough to let our emotions flow. You know, oftentimes we don't let our emotions flow because we think, oh, it's going to ruin our day, or I can't let so-and-so see that. But if we just let them buck for like 30 seconds, whew, it's gone. It's moved, and then we can move on with our day. And it's doing little things like stopping the boardroom meeting to listen to somebody who, you know, just lost a loved one or whatever they're going through, right? Finding those connection points in our shared humanity. Based on the fact that we have emotions. And with everything that life is demanding of us right now, if we don't slow down and take heed to those emotions, like, it's actually dangerous. And so I'm going to quote Jeffrey Wolf Green here, the founder of Evolutionary Astrology. He said, "Do you know how much energy it takes to repress what is natural?" We would actually have more energy if we allowed our emotions to flow, if we embodied our emotions, if we were there for our brothers and sisters and supported them as they allowed their emotions to flow. Because here's the thing, in societies, what actually determines safety? For who? Is it in the structures and is it in the laws? Is it in the policies? Or is it in the culture? Which do you think has more influence at the end of the day? You know, in my social work days, I was privileged enough to be in a position where I was writing policies for a medium-sized nonprofit organization. And I learned very quickly that the most ethical, humanitarian policy that I could possibly write out of my own brain, not even using AI, means nothing if the people in positions of power are adhering to a toxic culture, to reinforcing it, to creating it. And that is really what we are becoming conscious of right now on a collective level, is it not? We are realizing that with all of these structures that have been in place for many generations, crumbling now before our eyes, and now we have a position where we are needing to fight for the right policies, right? Needing to point out the holes in our structure that have gotten us to this place of dissolving, which is, a necessary part of the process. Like what we're going through right now, yeah, it's scary, but it's actually necessary for us to look at these structures within our society. And that definitely is a part of it, so I don't want to discount that. But I think it can be a very clever distraction from looking at the culture that actually carries more weight than what the papers say. And culture is something that is almost akin to wind. It's like you can't really see it, but when the wind blows, you can see the branches sway and the leaves fall off of the trees. Yeah, that's how it is. That's how it is to be in our culture and to be waking up to our culture. That is such a big theme right now for us, is to be taking off the rose-tinted glasses and waking up to, okay, like, all right, we have full-blown Nazis in front and center stage of the world right now. Okay, white supremacy isn't dead, everybody. It's like these are the types of realizations. And we do have power to change those winds. We do have power to change the culture. And again, it comes back down to my analogy of how do we observe if someone is in their power or not, right? They don't put themselves or anybody else on any pedestals or any inferiority. It's about treating one another with human with acknowledgement of human heart, as well as calling out the toxic culture when we see it happen. We need to be addressing it in whatever ways we are, of course, most safe to do so. Safety for the self, protection for the self is of utmost importance, because we don't want to be, jeopardizing our livelihood when resources are already dwindling. So yeah, if you're finding yourself in a situation where the workplace is a toxic culture or whatever environment is having this toxic culture and you're waking up to it, reach out, talk to somebody about it, see what you can do about it. This whole next few months is a time for us not to sit idle on these things. It's a time for us to lean into these things, to support one another. Those of us who see this and want to make change, we got to be supporting one another through this. And we are geniuses, we are innovators, we are powerful human beings, And we can. We can change our culture. And so I'm going to leave it at that. Probably everyone's going off about the Mercury retrograde. Yeah, that's it's important because the south node of Mercury, or sorry, the south node is ruled by Mercury right now. But I'll get more into that on our next video because we've got a interesting placement next video for the full moon in Scorpio. Sorry, new moon in Scorpio. Anyways, I'm going to shut my trap now. Thank you and take care.